Greetings, kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to my World of Darkness, and this is another Thicker Than Water recap. This week was actually a little bit different, because we only had half of our game. Serendipity, Cole, and Gwen were not able to attend for one reason or another, health issues, travel plans, being exhausted. So I had David, Abilene, and Daviga instead, and or just them. So I decided to not deep dive into the plot line that we were working on right now, which I guess the two that I'm working on are the One-Eyed King and also an issue that's going on at O'Hare National Airport. So, since Cole, playing Justin, was not available, and Justin's been actively avoiding the coterie as it is, there really wasn't much explaining to do with that one. I just said that Justin was off doing his own thing, probably still studying the Book of Nod, since he's still very Sabbat-minded. Then, with the other two not being there, Gwen and Serendipity, being L for Serendipity and Gabriel as Gwen, I went ahead and I said, since those two were gangrel, that they were off doing a reconnaissance job on the airport. L has reason to get in there whenever she wants to, because she does a lot of the trafficking back and forth of kindred who just come into Chicago through the airport. And Gabriel has the ability to turn into a bat. So it's a lot easier for him to get in there and actually spy on stuff without being seen. So that leaves us with Tinia, William, and Annette. And at first I was considering continuing running on with possibly another subplot. But I decided that this would be a good time to get to know Harker a little bit better. So as they were all sitting inside of William's condo where they've been crashing, Tinia gets a text from Harker asking her to call him whenever she's available. So that was right then. So she went ahead and called, and Harker said that he needed help, that Disable, the local leadership of the Chicago Tremere, had sent him on a little bit of an errand. Possible masquerade cover-up. And so he sends her a file, which is a morgue report of a 17-year-old girl who had severe head injury. A hole in the side of her head, effectively. And the report actually goes into saying that they thought at first that she was attacked by something, but all evidence shows that she did it herself. This was solidified and concluded when they found one of her press-on nails deep inside the wound, that she literally scratched her own brains out. So, with that, Tinia and the others decide that they are going to help Harker out as much as they can, and they meet him in a relatively nearby area, the city in Illinois in Polk County called Golconda, Illinois. Now, there's only a little over 600 in the population of this place. It's a very small area. So it was very fun running these kindred who are so used to large cities such as Portland, Oregon, and Chicago in such a small area. When they arrive, they find Harker standing outside of a small brick building, which is the hospital/morgue. And when they go in, they find that Harker is now looking at two victims. One of them being the girl who scratched her own brains out, and the other one being a guy who has been burned to death through electricity severely. And this is fresh, to the point where the body is still smoking. Trying to figure out everything, they did find granules of plants, rose hips and something called velvet bean, inside the girl's hair. And with a little bit of finagling, they were able to find out that velvet bean does tend to be a little bit of an irritant, can cause itching. The other guy, on the other hand, they're trying to figure out the source of everything, and they find that it's mostly come from his right hand, and they are able to find a scar wound, circular, in the very center of his palm. So they figure he's touched an electrode or something, but they decide they want to go check out where this is. This is a very interesting detective story that we're going on. And as they get over to where the man was injured, it was a It was a retirement home. It was an old folks home, which is right across the street from the morgue. They get in there and they do a full investigation on the room. They're able to find the guy's souls still melted to the tile. The resident of this room has been moved to another area, and the security guard is talking about how he was babbling that it was just a joke, that he never meant to hurt anybody. So while going over the room completely, they do find a hand buzzer. And things are starting to catch on at this point that itching powder was probably used in the girl's hair. They discussed checking the shampoo to see if there was any kind of issue with the girl's shampoo, but the rose hips and the velvet bean, they're ingredients to itching powder, like legit 99-cent store itching powder. And they find a hand buzzer. While they're trying to figure out what exactly is going on with this, they end up checking the only joke shop in town, where they meet the very fed up with his life proprietor, who at first they think might be some kind of disgruntled mage, or I don't even really know what to go on there. I'm going to go ahead and share the audio recording of the entire thing. It's long, it's a little over 3 hours, but if you enjoy it, please let me know, because we can do that more often. But this was just a fun one, and it really brought in some things. First off, Jonathan Harker's real first name, which is Kevin, which everybody had a great laugh over. I want to point out that I invented the character of Jonathan Harker, this Tremere who goes by the name Jonathan Harker, who's taken from the Dracula book, 15 years ago. It has been over a decade that I've been using this character as an NPC. And he's changed a little bit, but his name has always been what it is. And they found out that his real name, because he grew up in this town, and the way they got some of the information was he went up to the owner of this joke shop that he used to frequent when he was a child and said who he was. Harker's real name is Kevin. And if you guys are fans of Hunter the Parenting, which I'll put the link in the description, but you guys should see it. There is a Tremere who is the mighty Kevin in that. Oh my God, it was awful. They're sitting there sputtering, laughing and everything the whole time. At one point, I actually ended up using Dominate to make David's character, William, forget that he had heard his name. Tinia was a lot more polite, but the fact that they were laughing so hard out of character, I had to remove it in character. But, so, yeah, they end up doing that. While Tinia, William, and Harker are talking to the owner of this magic shop, this joke shop, our little Annette, our gangrel Annette, is off finding out how she likes to hunt in character, which I was very proud of this moment, because it was a time when a player has taken the responsibility for their character's feeding into their own hands, and a lot of the times I've noticed that does not happen very often. So I didn't even know that Annette was running a feeding scene through me for a while, like while they were doing this. When the three walk into the joke shop, Annette walks into a Chinese restaurant in the same strip mall a couple stores down and orders 2 orders of pork fried rice. And so I'm running this whole scene while Annette is waiting for their food order. When the food order comes out, she goes into the back alley of this strip mall and puts the food in a box and then uses animalism to beckon rats and fill this box with a few rats. And eventually, when the rest of the coterie is done talking to the proprietor and they end up going into the back alley for a little experiment, they find Annette with this box that she's like she's shaking the rats down and draining them from inside the box. It was actually very clever, and it made me want to create a new feeding type, or a new predator type called trapper. And I'm working on that right now. Now, obviously, you're going to end up getting animalism or protean, very much like farmer, but the abilities and the abilities and the advantages and stuff would definitely be much different than a farmer would be. So anyway, they walk in on her doing that, which was just a lot of fun. But Harker had stole a box of gator snaps from the store. And they end up throwing one at a dumpster, and it explodes, as if he had thrown a stick of dynamite into the thing. Now, as that's happening, they start hearing sirens, and the coterie at first is like, wow, that was quick, but small town. But then they realize that that's an ambulance, and it's heading across the street towards the hospital from the other side of town. When they go over there, they find out through a little bit of subterfuge that it's two children who have been brought in with severe and sudden ulcers. And they find out that the last thing that the children consumed were Cokes and Pop Rocks. So at this point, they're starting to realize that these are all connected as weird pranks and jokes. And the idea that Faye might be involved starts coming to play. The idea that it might be some kind of weird mage with a sense of irony is coming up. While they're trying to figure that stuff out, Harker is on the phone with the local Tremere who have ties with this hospital, trying to figure out exactly what's going on. He finds out that there was another victim the day before of something also kind of fishy. And the only reason that he hadn't heard about it before was because this person lived. And that is, there was a guy who was brought into that same hospital, because it's the only hospital in Golconda, who had every single one of his teeth ripped out. Now, strange as that may be, the stranger parts is that the home invader who did this was a very large, burly man who ripped all the teeth out with a wrench. And he was also wearing a tutu and little wings. At which point they realize this is a really messed up version of the Tooth Fairy. Especially since the guy had all of his teeth ripped out and there were 32 quarters under his pillow when everything was said and done. And the guy lived. He was on a lot of pain pills, but they were able to make out Tooth Fairy from the guy. And so they're freaking out. So they spend the next few minutes trying to figure out what other things they can think of, and they settle on the concept that these are lies that children believe. That that a tooth fairy comes in, claims the teeth, and leaves a quarter. That if you drink Coke and eat Pop Rocks, you can get ulcers. If you use itching powder, you scratch your brains out. If you use a hand buzzer, you can get electrocuted to death. Like, this is a whole bunch of stuff. And Harker also informs everybody at some point that when they were inside of that joke shop, everything was affected. He could tell because everything has a slight shimmering of thaumaturgical effect or magical effect. Maybe not thaumaturgy, but magical in general. So they start trying to list off other lies that of other things that children believe, and they settle on a wishing well. That if you put quarters in a wishing well, your wish will come true. And there is a wishing well in one of the parks, not too far from there. So they all head down there. This was probably one of my favorite parts about this, because William is... David's playing an amazing Malkavian. And the idea that Malkavians can come off as annoying, it really is strong here. Not only is David playing a character that is annoying the hell out of the other players, but he's annoying the hell out of my NPCs as well. Harker, at this point, who has never threatened to do anything at all hostile, has already threatened this guy like twice, that he's going to damage this Malkavian in some way. And this part was just so funny because I went ahead and I had everybody make a wish and roll roll a willpower check effectively. It was a composure and resolve roll. And they all throw their quarters in at the same time. Now, William wished to have a sign for the next thing to do. Annette, I'm just going to tell you all the wishes first. Annette wished that William would shut up, would not be able to talk. And Tinia asked to be at the solution, to be at the cause of everything that was going on so that they could do something to stop it. And they all throw their quarters at the same time. William's quarter ricochets off the bucket in the wishing well, hits a map that's a map of the city that's behind glass in the park, and it spider webs out in a perfect circle of the glass, with all of these little tiny breaks in the glass pinpointing each of the areas where someone was affected by these strange events. The very center of which is a small farmhouse in the middle of nowhere in Golconda. Annette's quarter ricochets out of the bucket and ends up going right into William's mouth and gets stuck in his throat, and he can't speak. And then when Tinia throws hers, she's just gone. I just went ahead, flash of light, gone. So they're trying to figure out what's going on. They do look at the map. Annette and William look at the map, and Tinia does call them from where she ends up, and she is at that farmhouse. She lets them know, and she calls and lets them know, and tells them that where they are. And they figure out that she's about a half an hour away in the middle of nowhere, in the very center of where this map is pinpointing the cause of it all. She investigates a little bit and finds just the local area. She doesn't really do much. She doesn't discover much. She doesn't go in and cause problems or anything. She just scouts out the area. After a little while, they finally do get there. And when the rest of the coterie catches up, Jonathan did not make a wish. Harker did not make a wish. He just didn't want to add anything magical to what was already going on. This was already very weird, and everything was all up in the air as it was, and he's a very cautious person. So they all drive out to that farmhouse. They find Tinia hiding in the barn, and they decide that they're going to try to figure out what is the cause. Obviously, it's coming from this house, and it's just an old farmhouse. It's an old rundown farmhouse. Looks like it's been slightly neglected. After some deliberation, they decide that they're just going to go and knock on the door and see if they can figure out what's going on. So they do. And they hear the voice of a child on the other side of the door ask who it is. And they claim to be cops. They've been doing that all night long. And for those of you who know what I base this plot line on and are sitting there shaking your heads because I ripped off a plot line, I'm fully admitting that. This was something that I just watched this again for like the fourth time, and it was like I really wanted to use this, but I didn't know when I would be able to, and this was a little gift. This is a great example of how you can get stories from pretty much anywhere to run in your games. But they claim to be cops. Annette has a badge. They put it through the mail slot in the door, and the little kid accepts the fact that they're police, opens the door, and talks to them. And they're able to deduce that this little kid is the cause of everything that's going on. They ask to check out the house and stuff. Harker goes upstairs and checks, and everything checks out. It just looks like a regular little kid's room. His parents aren't there. They work nights. Annette, I think, is the one who was wandering the house and found a picture of the Tooth Fairy drawn that was on the refrigerator, and it was this guy with a goatee, big burly guy with little wings and a tutu, like fitting the description of the guy who ripped out all the teeth. But they've decided, even by using Sense the Unseen on this child, that he is definitely releasing some kind of force and they're trying to figure out what exactly it is. At which point, they don't really know what to do with this kid. Like, the last thing then they need to do is do something stupid, him find out they're vampires and, like, throw garlic powder at them and have them die. Like, they're at this point in time, this child is completely affecting reality. They decide that they are going to wait, deliberate, and possibly talk to the parents when they get home. They find out that mom gets home at like 2 a.m. from her shift at the hospital because she's a nurse at the hospital. This kind of pushes the idea that this kid is definitely the one in charge of this, and the mom might be unintentionally transmitting what's going on, since she's pretty much at ground zero where all the patients are going. In truth, it's just a coincidence that she works in the hospital. But they're waiting outside trying to talk about what they're going to do, and at this point, William's like, I'm going to go fix the fact that I can't talk, because he's been trying to like text to people and write them notes and everything like that through this whole time, trying to figure things out. So he hops in the car and starts heading straight back down to the wishing well to make another wish. At this point, the rest of the coterie is like, we don't want to wait. We need to figure out what's going on. But how do we do that? And do we kill the kid? Like, is it really his fault? Like, is this an unconscious thing? Like, they don't think that he's doing it on purpose. They think that this is something that's just radiating from the kid, and it really does seem to be. They decide that they're going to try to tell the child the truth. Waiting for the mom to show up is just not that much of an option. They do have to get home and find a place to sleep before the sun comes up. And waiting around till 2 o'clock in the morning is just going to be pushing things too close. So they end up... And also, what are they going to do when the mom gets home? Your child's warping reality? We're going to have to pop a cap in his ass? Like, seriously, like, what is the protocol here? So they decide that they're just going to handle it themselves. They go back and they knock on the door. I think at this point, Annette decided to wait at the car. I am trying to do this out of memory, but I will be putting, like I said, I will be putting the recording up. And while so Harker and Tinia go back up to the house, and they start talking to the kid. And I might be putting this in the wrong order, but at one point in time, they do pull out. They do at one point talk to him about the gator snaps, about the little snap pops, and they show him a YouTube video about them. Not them, but they show the kid a YouTube video on a quality check on all of the different brands of this stuff, and the kid is just very confused because he thought that if one of these things went off in your hand, they would blow your hand off. They end up throwing, before they show him the video, they do throw one of the gator snaps into the yard, and it puts a crater in the yard, which the kid's a little freaked out because he's going to have to answer later. But then they show him that video, and he gets a little bit confused, and they let the kid throw one, and it just pops. And they're like, okay, we defused a belief. So what do we do now? Do we explain to the kid everything that he believes is wrong? Like, how long is this going to take? This is months and months of therapy. We've got to fix this. So at this point, Harker pulls out the hand buzzer and explains that, like, look, it doesn't take batteries. It doesn't have any electricity in it at all. It's this little tiny spring that's wound up that shakes it when you push the button in. He explains to the kid how it works. He sciences the child. And then he touches Tinny on the shoulder with it, which takes her by a complete surprise. And Harker is very happy that his hunch worked because it did not cook Tinia at that point. Not to mention, he does know that tasers don't really work on vampires the same way. So hopefully, even if it didn't work, it wouldn't have been that bad. But regardless, it was a hunch. The kid is shocked, and they end up giving the toy to the kid, just to, as a sign of good faith. But then they decide to start talking about all of the different things that are going on, explaining to the kid that he's making this stuff happen, that he's making it bad. But the kid fights back with logic. And the kid says, me believing in things doesn't mean that it works. And instantly a weight is taken off everybody's shoulders. They tricked the kid into believing that everything he thinks doesn't become reality, instantly lifting the spell that was going on in the area. And they realize, they can feel it, that it works. The sense the unseen reveals that things aren't enchanted anymore. Instantly, William can speak again, so he turns the car around and starts heading back to the farm. They did it. By accident, but they did it. Now, another thing that the child believed that the kindred didn't quite get until it was after everything was done was that Golconda is 5.5 hours away from Chicago. The kid believed that he lived just a little bit a ways from Chicago. So it was only a half an hour drive. But it's now a 5.5 hour drive to get back. And that's pretty much where we ended it. I understand. I completely ripped off that story. That was an episode of Supernatural from like season 5, I think. But I did change it because they were really going for their whole demon kick back then, and this was an Antichrist child. This was a child whose mom was impregnated by a demon, blah, blah, blah. It was a whole thing. But I'm leaving an air of mystery on this one. Now, the conversation of was this like a baby mage that was affecting things before it knew what was going on, before, like, was this a kid who was just affected by his avatar or something like that? That's really coming into play. I really loved running this story. It was a lot of fun. And if you guys want to, like I said, please listen to the recording, the audio, because oh my god, it was very interesting. It was very interesting to say the least. I'm going to do a little bit of editing on the audio, but simply just to remove like some out of character bits here and there, because you guys don't need to listen to us eating a snack or anything like that, or yeah. Anyway, so I don't know. This was just a very interesting story, and this was actually not only done in Supernatural, this was also done in the Twilight Zone. This is actually from an old book also, about this kid who just has world-changing capabilities. I really love the fact how the game fixed it, because in most storylines there is no fix. In Supernatural, they talked to the kid, they told him the truth, what was going on, and he ran away, and that was it. He's still out there somewhere. It's a loose plot line that never got fixed in the entire 15 years worth of storyline that they had. It was just something they couldn't do anything about. In the Twilight Zone, they explained the fact that the child has these extraordinary powers, and he and this woman who ends up better at understanding him are able to shape their lives together, but it doesn't really get resolved. Anyway, so I'd like to know what you guys think. Look for inspiration wherever you can when it comes to storylines. This was a quick little one-shot-ish kind of thing. It doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the storyline that I'm running. It was just a chance for me to have fun with my friends when only half of them were able to show up. But that was what we did. I am Voivode Maquette. This was my World of Darkness, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you for joining me. Good evening.